Inyan who? What the Rebbe is discussing is the pasuk where it says "V'hachayis rotzi v'shov," and the Rebbe brought that there are two pirushim in this. One pshat is that it refers to the Chayis HaKodesh, the Malachim. That their relationship to the Eibishter is rotzi v'shov. Another pshat that the Rebbe brought is that everything, the godly energy that's in everything is rotzi v'shov, and that's why we see that even by human beings, v'havdol animals as well. What's the life that's in them? The heart is constantly beating because it's rotzi v'shov. So the Rebbe in the next place will explain why taka is it that the nature of everything is rotzi v'shov. Why not direct without a constant back and forth? To explain this concept, it's well known. The godly light, the godly energy that gives chayis to all of the ilamis and nevroim and creations, who bechinas ha'ara bilvad. It's merely a ray of the Eibishter's presence that engages with the creation, which gives the vitality to creation. As the pasuk says, Malchuscha, Malchus kol elamim. It's only the midah of Malchus of the Eibishter. That's the chayis of all the ilamis. What's the expression of Malchus? The Inyan HaMelucha, the idea of Melucha is the Inyan HaMalchus, who are Ora Ba'alma. It's just a ray of Hashem's presence that enters into the worlds. That chayis that we have is only coming from the Melucha of the Eibishter. As we know, it says regarding over here, the Rebbe doesn't bring it, but regarding Malchus, it usually says that Malchus is a Ha'ara Ba'alma. Malchus is a Melech B'layam. The whole existence of a king is when there's a nation. It's not the essence of the Eibishter as he is to himself removed of everything. It's the connection that the Eibishter has to an existence of a nation. And the Lashon that Rebbe brings here is the Melech Shmoi Nikra Leim. A king, the king himself is removed of the nation. What's the relationship between the king and the nation? Shmoi. Only his name. That's where the relationship is. Melech Shmoi Nikra Leim. Only the name of the king is connected to his people. Kamoi, got it? We're on page Nun Aleph. Kamoi, Sha'ashemu Ora Ba'alma, She'ein Negei Alatzme Klautna. Just like it comes to a name, the name of a person does not change the very essence of the person himself. The essence of the person is beyond his name. It's not, the name is just l'chayra, a point of reference. It's just a way of communicating. You use a name. The whole idea of a name is completely chitzanius. It's not negate to the essence of the person at all. The same is also true with the chayis of the Eibishter. That's engaged with the world. It's only a ha'ara ba'alma. It's a small fraction of the source where this ha'ara comes from. So this is a concept that Chassidus always speaks about. You don't have to go anywhere. We're running. It's a concept that Chassidus always tells us that when we speak about the Eibishter's chayis that comes into Eilamis, it's a ha'ara. Usually it actually says ha'ara, de ha'ara, de ha'ara. It's no, the Eibishter himself, the essence of the Eibishter himself, is way beyond the existence of the Nevroim, of Eilamis, no shaykhis b'chlal. It's only a ha'ara ba'alma. But here's the thing though. In this Maamar, the Rebbe is going to focus on the fact this ha'ara ba'alma has a source. True, the Eibishter himself remains removed. The ha'ara is the source of chayis of Eilamis, but could we separate the two? Could we just make a separation? There's a ha'ara, there's a ray of godliness that gives chayis, and the Eibishter himself is removed. Where does the ha'ara come from? The source of the ha'ara is the Eibishter himself. This ray of godliness that's coming, that's drawn into Eilamis in order to give chayis to everything. Since it's only a ray of Hashem's presence, so this ha'ara, this is a ray of Hashem's existence, so it definitely has a source above it that it's connected to, where it comes from. Where it originates from. So this energy, that's the source of chayis for the worlds. When it's included in its source, in its source, the ha'ara is not identified as a ha'ara. In its source, the ha'ara that gives chayis to Eilamis is part of the makeup, so to speak. It's part of the experience within the Eibishter himself that's removed of Elamus. So the ha'ara is not a separate thing. There's an array of, the mashal Chassidus always brings is like the ha'ara of the shemesh that's b'toich ha-shemesh. When the ha'ara of the shemesh is still in its source before it comes out of the sun, so over there it's not, you can't identify it as something separate of the sun itself. Over here we see the sunlight and we take a look and we look at the light and the heat of the sun outside of the source as if it was a separate thing. But it's obvious that what is the ha'ara? A ha'ara is because of the nature of the sun itself, and therefore out of that bright existence of the sun comes a ray of light millions of whatever miles away from the sun itself. But when it's included in the source, that ray of light, the tiny fraction amount of light and heat that there is outside of the sun, within the sun itself, it's included. It's part of the entity of the sun itself. It cannot be identified as something separate at all. So over here, what the Rebbe is saying is the ha'ara of chayis that comes into Elamus in its source. It's part of the etzem of the Eibishter that's removed of everything. The ha'ara of chayis of the Eibishter that comes into the world when it's included in its source. There, it's not about just the ha'ara that's outside, that's focused on giving chayis to something else. Over there, it's connected to the source. The existence of the ha'ara in its source is about the source. He's part of something else that's much greater than it. That doesn't have its own identity, b'chlal. It can't be identified separately. So this is the source of the concept of Ratzi V'Shov. Hinei ha'ara zu hi b'pchinas Ratzi lales v'likol b'sharshav m'kaira. The ha'ara of godliness, when it comes out of its source, that's not its true metzius. When it comes out of its source over here, it is identified. We see it as a separate thing. It's malchus, it's shame, it's a name, it's the malucha of the Eibishter. But all of this, what is really the source of it? It's all within the Eibishter himself. We're there. That's its true identity. That's its place where it comes from, where it originates from. So after the ha'ara comes out of its source, it has that yearning to return back to the place where it originated from, what its true identity is. That's the concept of Ratzi. And then after this Ratzi, Yeshna Inyan Ashov.
It's interesting, you call that Ratzi.
Mm-hmm.
The Ratzi is going back to its source.
Correct.
It's not the Shuv.
No, not Shuv. Ratzi means running, returning. In this case, Ratzi means to go back to its source. It wants to connect to what it really is.
So it's point for Catholic then. From
the Lashon of Ratzi V'Shuv? Okay, possibly. But that's the Taich of Ratzi. Ratzi means a loif tzirik. He wants to go back to connect to where he truly comes from. Yeah.
And the Shuv, we'll find out in the next two lines.
So. So where are we over here? So the ha'ara is Ratzi. The ha'ara always wants to return to its place. This concept of Ratzi V'Shuv, you have b'negei to oir, you have b'negei to all kinds of things. You have it in seichel, you have it in midas, you have it in every aspect of life. There's a concept called a ha'ara, which is dependent on a shayrish or makir, which comes from a source, and it always sort of has to return back to its source to retain that nature that it has. The moment you cut off a ha'ara from the source of where it comes from, it has nothing. The ha'ara mitzad atzma is not a metzias b'chlal. The whole connection, the whole energy of the ha'ara is because of the shayrish or makir. Take it in a dvar seichel. If a person has a concept, he has an ideology, he has a whole idea, and then you have one ha'ara, one sliver of that idea, which is dependent on this whole entire approach, this whole entire concept. If you try to share that little sliver of an idea, and you don't have the background of the whole concept, of the whole ideology behind it, so then this one little idea has nothing to stand on. You have it a lot in seichel. You have the same thing also in midas, in every area in a person's life. If a person has a certain particular behavior, which is part of a whole scheme of a certain approach that a person has, and you separate that one ha'ara, that one detail, from the whole shayrish makar of everything that's going on in his life, that little detail, that little one behavior has no erech, has no value, is nothing. The concept of a ha'ara is when you have a ray, a small chelik of something, which is part of something much greater. It has to be connected to the source the mar, to the source of everything. If not, if you separate it, so then the ha'ara is nothing. The ha'ara is a ha'ara, but alma has no value for itself at all. That's the concept of ratzei. A ha'ara, on one hand, the chayis that the Eilumis receives from the Eibishter, if the Eibishter himself directly was engaged with the Eilumis, he would overwhelm the whole Metzias of everything. The whole world would be bottled with Metzias. There couldn't be any existence. The Eibishter's presence is revealed over here. The Welt is garnished mit nisht. There has to be a tzimtzumim, another tzimtzum. It's a ha'ara ba'alma shmelech shmai nikra aleim. But even this ha'ara ba'alma, if the ha'ara ba'alma has to always be connected to the source. There's that ratzui aspect, that connection to where it originates from. Without that connection, the ha'ara itself, separating it from its source, is garnished. But then, following the ratzoi, the connection to the source, there's the shuv. When it goes down into the metzias of the worlds. So if it's going to connect to the source, so then what's going to be? Then it can't recognize an other. It can't recognize a metzias that's outside of the source. That's the ongoing challenge over here. On one hand, the ha'ara has to be connected to the source in order to have something to it. At the same time, though, if it's connected to the source, it doesn't recognize anything outside of the source. It doesn't recognize b'chlal metzias. So at the same time, the ha'ara has to go out of the source to allow for a metzias of the Welt to emerge, to exist. It's the ongoing ratzi and shuv. So then there's a shuv. Hainu lefi sha'kavona al yoinehi. What's the Eibishter's intention? Sheyiyeh gilui ar lamata lahar b'elamis. That the light, the godly energy should come out and allow for an existence, allow for elamis and nivroyim, and there, this chayis should enter and give chayis to another existence. So therefore it comes down to allow for an existence, and here this entity that exists should receive its chayis from the ha'ara. Okay, so you get the ongoing rotzi v'shuva here. The Rebbe is saying, on one hand it has to be connected to its source, otherwise the ha'ara has nothing. At the same time, it has to be outside of the source to recognize an existence outside of the source. So it comes out as follows. The very same reason that causes the tnuah, the movement in the direction of ratzoi, that it needs to be connected, the hainu hergish makayrai, that the ha'ara has to feel its source, it's the very same source that's the cause for the shuv, that the godly light comes down. The source, the Eibishter, had a desire to create elamis, that there should be an existence of something, metzias, zulas, elamis, nevroim. The source itself desires this, that it should come down lamata. So as it connects to the source, that itself is the reason why it comes down. Chassidus uses the same concept. We'll see over here in the Hemshech that the Rebbe brings it mamish in the Seifim, but Chassidus uses the same concept when they get to the neshama of every single yid. The Rebbe used to use this as also in Sichos. The Rebbe uses this as a mashal also for a person that's going far away, he's traveling and going on a shlichus or wherever it is. On one hand, if you're going on a shlichus, you have to be connected to the source. If you're not connected to the source, you have nothing to give. If you leave and then you become independent, and so you're not, the point is to bring the mayon, to bring the source, the wellspring, where you're coming from to the place that you're going to. If you disconnect, so your shlichus ends. There's nothing. At the same time, though, if a person comes to a place, a community, wherever he is, he has to provide and bring to the place. He has to adapt to the people in a positive sense. I don't mean adapt to lose his identity, but adapt to be able to transmit the message from the source to the place that he's in. It's the same thing with the neshama. The neshama comes mol maila. If you don't have that ongoing connection, so then the neshama of this world is gone. It's finished. It's lost. At the same time, the neshama has to give over the message that it has in a terminology that the guf and the nefesh bahamis understand. It has to be able to speak the nefesh bahamis' language. So this is the ongoing rotzi v'shuv that every single person is experiencing or should experience all the time. All right, till let's see inside. The fact that we see that there's creations that we don't see the nature of Ratzi and Shuv in them, including human beings as well. You don't see the Ratzi v'Shuv Begilu in their Aveda. You see it in the Defiku Deliba, in the heart, the pumping and the heartbeat, but you don't see the Ratzi v'Shuv. They don't feel their source. They're not aware. They're not aware. They don't feel what's going on. Or dveikis b'makar. The dveikis to the source is not there. But whether they feel it or not, azay demaisa. This is the mitzias. The chayis alaki is in constant motion of Ratzi v'Shuv. Everything we're talking about over here regarding what the malachim, regarding the mitzias of Elam is the same is also true regarding the neshamas, the hagam sheyiduam. So there's an expression that's brought in Chassidus as follows: Sheneshamas heim ma'ashalakus nasa nivra. What are neshamas? A neshama on one hand is a lakus, it's a chelik elikam imal mamish, but at the same time it's nasa nivra. It becomes a creation. What's meant to becomes a creation? Godliness that becomes a creation. It's a very, very hard expression to understand. But in the simple sense, what this means is, a neshama is a chelik elikam imal mamish, but at the same time though, a neshama, when it comes into the guf, is developed into a personality that has kaiches and evarim that will respond to the kaiches and evarim of the guf. The neshama assumes a certain personality, seichel, midis, and all the other kaiches that it has to have for the guf. So therefore, the very fact that the neshama becomes a mitzias of a personality is not just the etzem of the neshama as it is in its source. It's a lukos, it's the source, the etzem of the neshama, which becomes a mitzias of a nivra. So mekomakayim hareu beged the nivra. The neshama, even though the neshama is a lukos, but yet it assumes a personality, it becomes a gather of a nivra, it has a formulated mitzias, and therefore it could relate, it could give chayas on the level of the guf. So therefore, einom tamid ba'tanua the ratzi v'shuv. When it comes to the neshama, once it assumes a personality, and it comes into the guf, and it adapts to the mitzias of the guf, the neshama will not sense the ongoing ratzi v'shuv the way malachim do. Malachim are in a constant hergish and dveikis to their makar. They feel and recognize and are constantly aware of their source. So that ratzi v'shuv identifies their very existence every single moment. They feel it. On the neshama, though, comes down a ishtalshlus of all the elements. It comes into the mitzias of a guf, and here the neshama doesn't feel that ongoing ratzi v'shuv. V'oid, it's even more so. The lufa'am and neshama saying betnua davedas Hashem. Neshama, sometimes he's serving the Eibishter. Lufa'am meina betnuzu. The neshama is in a guf, and sometimes he's occupied with himself. And he's not occupied with the Eibishter, so he's not serving the Eibishter. So not only isn't there a ratzi v'shuv, but the neshama is locked up in a body, and the body doesn't allow him b'chlal to serve the Eibishter. Tam adavar, and the reason for this is kimash and his bar leil. This that we're explaining here, that the energy of the Eibishter is in a perpetual state of ratzi v'shuv, since the chayis of the Eibishter is merely a ray of the source, and therefore it's an ongoing state of ratzi v'shuv. This is the cause, this is the concept that causes ratzi v'shuv. But in order to actually experience this ratzi v'shuv, is gam hergish hamakar, dveikis b'makar. There has to be a connection of feeling, to be connected to the source. It's true that the chayis of the Eibishter comes to us in a way of ratzi v'shuv, but there's a tzimtzum, there's a helim that separates and doesn't allow us to sense that. So just because that's the nature of the chayis itself, if a person does not have the hergish, if he's not conscious and aware and connected beyond any of the halamas v'astadim that disconnects us from our source, we're not going to experience that ratzi v'shuv. So l'chein ha-nevroim she'eina margishim es mekayram, nevroim that do not feel on a revealed level their source, eina mebchinas ratzi v'shuv. They don't constantly feel that ongoing ratzi v'shuv like the malachim. The malachim don't have that helen v'hester that separates, and they constantly feel the godly energy in them. Mashenk and all the other nevraim, even if it's true that the ratzi v'shuv is there, but to feel the ratzi v'shuv, to experience the ratzi v'shuv, for that is a huge aveda that a person has to remove the layers of separation that there are between him and Elokus. So therefore, when it comes to the neshama itself, there are many layers to the neshama. There are 5 different names that we identify the neshama: nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida. So hine b'chinas chaya yechida shebenefesh, the highest levels of the neshama, shichavuka dvuka bach, which embraces the Eibishter, cleaves to the Eibishter. He tamed b'tnur deratzi v'shov. The levels of chaya yechida, where the separation does not exist, the concealment, the layers that conceal and separate are not there. The chaya and yechida constantly feel that ratzi v'shov. Masha'en came b'chinas naran.
Also chaya.
That's what it says there. Chaya and yechida. Masha'en came b'chinas naran, which is not the case when it comes to the naran of the neshama, the lower levels of the neshama. Einam talmud b'chinas ratzi v'shov. Over there, the naran is that level of the neshama, which, as he said before, becomes a nivra. It assumes a personality. It gets connected to the guf. So it's not conscious of the godly energy that's there constantly. So therefore, it doesn't have that constant relationship, and it's not aware of the ratzi v'shov. That's our Aveda. That's the lifetime Aveda of a person in this world, to remove the outer layers of the guf, of the nefesh bahamis, and even of the neshama itself, and to go and to connect to the chaya yechida of the neshama, to higher levels of the neshama, and to reveal that relationship with the Eibishter, which is an ongoing ratzi v'shov. Yeah, that's the Nakoda over here. I think we're going to stop over here by this Nakoda. It goes into Iris V'Kalim, which is a little bit different. We'll continue with Shem tomorrow. Shgayach.
Yesterday, I think I heard yesterday what you're saying, that the medical